We briefly mentioned host-based firewalls when we talked about network monitoring and intrusion detection systems. Host-based firewalls are important to creating multiple layers of security. They protect individual hosts from being compromised when they're used in untrusted and potentially malicious environments. They also protect individual hosts from potentially compromised peers inside a trusted network. Our network-based firewall has a duty to protect our internal network by filtering traffic in and out of it, while the host-based firewall on each individual host protects that one machine. Like our network-based firewall, we'd still want to start with an implicit deny rule. Then we'd selectively enable specific services and ports that'll be used. This lets us start with a secure default and then only permits traffic that we know and trust. You can think of this as starting with a perfectly secure firewall configuration and then poking holes in it for the specific traffic we require. This may look very different from your network firewall configuration, since it's unlikely that your employees would need remote SSH access to their laptops, for example. Remember that to secure systems, you need to minimize attack surfaces or exposure. A host-based firewall plays a big part in reducing what's accessible to an outside attacker. It provides flexibility while only permitting connections to selective services on a given host from specific networks or IP ranges. This ability to restrict connections from certain origins is usually used to implement a highly secure host or network. From there, access to critical or sensitive systems or infrastructure is permitted. These are called bastion hosts or networks, and are specifically hardened and minimized to reduce what's permitted to run on them. Bastion hosts are usually exposed to the internet, so you should pay special attention to hardening and locking them down to reduce the chances of compromise. But they can also be used as a sort of gateway or access portal into more sensitive services like core authentication servers or domain controllers. This would let you implement more secure authentication mechanisms and ACLs on the bastion hosts without making it inconvenient for your entire company. Monitoring and logging can be prioritized for these hosts more easily. Typically, these hosts or networks would also have severely limited network connectivity. It's usually just to the secure zone that they're designed to protect and not much else. Applications that are allowed to be installed and run on these hosts would also be restricted to those that are strictly necessary, since these machines have one specific purpose. Part of the host-based firewall rules will likely also provide ACLs that allow access from the VPN subnet. It's good practice to keep the network that VPN clients connect into separate, using both subnetting and VLANs. This gives you more flexibility to enforce security on these VPN clients. It also lets you build additional layers of defenses. While a VPN host should be protected using other means, it's still a host that's operating in a potentially malicious environment. This host is then initiating a remote connection into your trusted internal network. These hosts represent another potential vector of attack and compromise. Your ability to separately monitor traffic coming and going from them is super useful. There's an important thing for you to consider when it comes to host-based firewalls, especially for client systems like laptops. If the users of the system have administrator rights, then they have the ability to change firewall rules and configurations. This is something you should keep in mind and make sure to monitor with logging. If management tools allow it, you should also prevent the disabling of the host-based firewall. This can be done with Microsoft Windows machines when administered using Active Directory, as an example.